that sleepest, arise from the dead.
Read the Bible, you'll find out that God's not too happy with what's going on around us.
Redeem the time, because the days are evil.
The Bible has not changed.
Boldly proclaim the restoration and preservation of Christian values in America.
Satan has brainwashed a whole nation.
As goes the church, so goes the nation.
Nobody's convicted of anything anymore.
And now, here's Last Call with your host, B.J. Edwards.
Chaos and madness, I tell you. Chaos and madness. I have never seen anything like this. What's next? What is next? Hey, B.J. Edwards along, Mr. Anderson, your last call.
Good
2
morning.
hours of Christian talk radio with a sting. I'm thankful that the Founding Fathers gave a society in which the family is the fundamental unit. Do you know how important that is? That's a quote from Phyllis Schlafly, by the way. We have a great guest, hour number 2. Guest in hour number 2. A favorite of mine, Neil Mammen. And he's going to bring along Kevin McGary with him. And they've got some interesting things to talk about. I love the approach. As goes the family, so goes the nation, folks. We're going to stretch your mind this morning and help you defend your liberties. Last call relief with a dose of common sense, administered by Doc Edwards and Mr. Anderson. Hey, if you want to call in, talk to myself or Mr. Anderson or one of our guests, 302, write it down, 302-202-1110, 302-202-1110.
Conference muted.
And then if you just want to listen, 605-475-0017 or 641-741-0816. Those are listen-only lines. Of course, you can catch us on YouTube. Interesting news late last night, Mr. Anderson, right?
Yeah.
We lost a Supreme Court justice.
I think we lost her a long time ago, but
A rock star. I'm hearing Fox News. It says, wow, a rock star.
really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just glowing. You never speak ill of the dead, Mr. Anderson. You just don't do that.
Well, I just guess I got poor manners.
Yeah.
I talk about them the same as I did when they were alive.
Yep. What would happen in November if we made November 3rd of this year, and we did this every 4 years, a national holiday? Wait a minute, a national paid holiday? What would happen? How would that affect our elections? Do you think more people would register to vote? Voter turnout might be better, right?
It'd be an
And what about that
interesting
newest Democrat fad, mail-in balloting? Mail-in balloting. What would happen to that? There she is, rock star Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Let the debate begin, folks. I'm not too sure about you.
Morals.
Say again, please.
She helped destroy some morals,
Yes, she did.
the morals
See-
of our society.
She stood up for what she believed in. You got to give her that. She stood up for what she believed in. But there were no moral guardrails to help the rest of society out. I'm already cringing at the political assassinations that we're going to face between now and November 3rd. I'm not too sure anyone will be able to listen to the news media, including Fox, during the next 2 months. Ginsburg is just, I mean, what a catalyst this is going to be. We now have something else to badmouth our opposition about. And well, last time we didn't do it this way, and hey, look it, if you lose the political party race, you lose control. And it's how you handle that which matters. I'm not too sure whether I believe that they should try to get a new Supreme Court judge in or not. Really not. But it's not going to make any difference. The process is what's going to be scary. This is not going to be pretty. Already isn't. And it will start on the leftist Marxist side. But you got to remember, Donald Trump does not know how to duck and run. The mudslinging is about to begin, and the American public is about to get covered with all the sludge. This will not be pretty. One of the things that we need to concern ourselves with, especially conservatives, I got an email from Citizens Go this morning and asked me if I thought Donald Trump would win the upcoming election. Don't know. But they went on to say that an independent advisory board is being created with the power to review your posts and decide if you're allowed to speak or not. And yes, this is Facebook version of the Supreme Court. There's not going to be no 5-4 decisions. When I first heard the idea, I was worried about what was in store. But I think it's worse than we can imagine. Of the 20 members of the Facebook Review Board, I follow politics for a long time. And one of the things that politicians like to do is deflect. It's all about heat transfer. If I can transfer this heat to somebody else as a politician, you do it, because if you get caught doing something, then you're probably going to do something wrong to 60% or 40% of the public, one or the other. And if you do it long enough, you can't get reelected. So you can't afford to have an opinion. So what you do is farm it out to what? You farm it out to a committee, right? Well, the committee advised, right? The CDC advised. I'm going to talk about them this morning too. So what they advise, they're the experts. We appointed them, so we got to follow that, right? 20-member review board. 18 are openly linked to the left-wing mega donor George Soros. And large corporations are working openly to try to silence group like, pick one. Pick what we're doing, the Natural Family Foundation. Whatever organization that is conservative, they're going to fight it. What we need to do, or try to do, and this doesn't mean we're going to be successful, but you learn when you engage. You don't learn if you just watch football film all day long. You got to get in and play and see how it, quote unquote, works, right? If the plans of the board are not rolled back quickly, I'll be calling my congressman again this week, Facebook will not control the actions of this new board. In fact, they're required to abide by the decisions of the new board, no matter what. Again, this is fair warning. And it's not just Facebook, folks. Twitter, etc., the news media will be controlling the information airways and filter it to their left Marxist side. So I guess I'm telling you is just don't think that your vote's going to count. You're going to have to get in that information war battle. I could talk about Friends of Liberty. Think of the press as a psychological warfare operation aimed at Americans, and everything makes sense. Friendsofliberty.com is an example of what we're trying to do with friendsofliberty.com is to get the general public start thinking about what can happen and why it can happen, and how it's not just about the COVID virus. By the way, this is an opportunity. Excuse me. We just haven't been taking it. This is an opportunity to affect people, to talk to people, to bring them out of their shell. We can't continue to put our head in the ground, folks. This just ain't working. You can start with friendsofliberty.com. We're trying to stop the forced vaccinations that are coming down the road. And by the way, this doesn't mean that Congress is going to pass a law, but they are going to use your tax money to affect other people. I was driving on the highway the other day, and the sign said, "Buckle up, mask up." Right? Buckle up, mask up. I mean, I'm tired of the harassment. I'm tired of the discrimination. I'm tired of the social shaming. I'm tired of having a manager run me down in their shop and slap a mask in my face. Aren't you tired of that? Don't you want your liberties and freedoms? I said last week, this I think is the last opportunity for us to step up and regain those liberties and freedoms. We already lost the moral battle, but we can turn this around by going back through the COVID mask thingy, the COVID vaccination thingy, and get back what we've lost.
I went shopping yesterday and walked through Kroger's. Nobody bothered me. I didn't wear a mask.
Mm-hmm.
That was fine. The only thing that bothered me is at the checkout. The guy says, "I can't give you change. Do you want to donate it?"
Yeah, Kroger does that. Kroger does that.
Like,
Meyer doesn't.
What is it about coins?
Well, I think, and there's conspiracy theories about this, but it makes sense that they want to go to a cashless society.
Well, they're just theories.
Say again, please.
They're just theories. But we don't have to call them conspiracies.
But it's part of that control aspect again.
Absolutely.
They want to control what we're doing.
They want to get in our wallet.
Well, plus, they want to get into what we're doing. They'll know electronically. You know, the federal government, stores can't, if you went into a store and you said, I'm exempt from wearing a mask, and you can say for medical reasons, they can't ask you those medical reasons. But did you know that the federal government, that the state government can get that information? Can't get it. They have that information. And they'll have the information on your finances. And what I just said earlier, information is powerful. And he who controls the information controls the world. This isn't just about advertising. This is about knowledge. And if they come up with some kind of an AI program, I'm sorry, I believe they've already come up with an AI program. You can pretty much tell us what it is we're going to do next. They'll shoot things on your computer screen. You're going, wow, that's interesting. I was just thinking about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you sure were. Or if you weren't, you're gonna. It fits into your box that they want to put you in. Information is power, and we need to do everything we can to limit the amount of information that others have about us. Mother and father should have that information, but not the government, not businesses. Well, but if they know what you're looking for, they can bring a better product to you, right? At what cost? Privacy, morals, liberty, freedom, and privacy. Is anybody waking up here? You see what's happening? This is just crazy, and it's not getting any better. Not getting any better at all. I don't know how many people we have watching Mr. Anderson, so I can't get anything on my screen at this point. Hey, last call, B.J. Edwards, Mr. Anderson. Racism. We're going to be talking a lot about that today, racism. 13 examples of Donald Trump being racist.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Attach that word to anything. A mouse can be racist.
Don't give him any more ideas than you already have, Mr. Anderson. That's not fair. That's not fair.
Well,
And I
there's
want to
white
talk
ones
about,
and
I
gray
need to talk
ones.
about the CD. Go ahead.
There's white ones and gray ones.
Yeah, true. True. And why don't we take a quick break?
Keeping you informed. This is Last Call with BJ Edwards.
Contact other people's congressmen. The guy I've got is just worthless. Absolutely worthless. He knows the theory that you got to be doing something to do something wrong. So the only time that he'll talk to you is about what the federal government is going to give you. He likes to target the older folks. Just Anyway, I called some congressmen this week. In his congressional testimony, CDC Director Robert Redfield Wednesday said a mask could be even more effective in fighting against the virus than a vaccine.
I saw that.
Mm-hmm. The face mask is more guaranteed to protect me against COVID than when I take a COVID vaccine. Somebody asked me the other day, when do you think the masks are going to go away? And I said, I don't see that happening in the near future, if at all. You might get those astronaut suits, but I don't think we're going to get rid of the mask unless we do something about it. Redfield said, if I don't get an immense immune response, the vaccine's not going to protect me. The face mask will. The president suggested Redfield was wrong on that too. Mr. Trump said he hopes masks help, and they probably do, but some people feel that masks have problems. Now there's a political statement. With all due respect, and with regard to the health care of all the USA, I'd like to request a second opinion. You know, you go to a doctor and you don't like the diagnosis or doesn't feel comfortable with it, you get a second opinion, right? You know, there are other experts out there that do claim that mask is not at all effective. As a matter of fact, some even claim that it's harmful. To date, there has been no national debate. And that has to happen. Not just with regard to the mask, but with other COVID-related data, other health-related data, to be honest with you. We could talk about the health of abortions, right? But let's stick on subject, because it's one that's just eating our liberties and freedom up, and that's COVID-19, the healthcare pandemic. And one of the questions we might want to ask is, what's the difference between COVID-related deaths and just plain old deaths directly related to COVID? Why do they break that out? Do masks work? Don't they work? How well? We have one source, the CDC, and Robert Redfield showed his colors the other day, which are blue. We need to have somebody like Simone Gold or Tanley Harima, who's director of Stand Up Michigan, personal protective expert, decades in that. She says masks don't work. But they wear them in the hospital. Yes, they do. But that's a controlled environment. And to be honest with you, from what research I've done, old Doc Harrison here says that if you're gonna depend on a mask, it better be air pressured. That'll be easy to do with that astronaut suit that you're going to have us wearing, right? So I called up congressmen and basically said, I want to see a debate. That Trump said the CDC director made a mistake on the vaccine timeline, among other things. He contradicted the testimony of the Center of Disease Control Director, Robert Redfield. But he's in a political mode. We need to get somebody that's not in a political mode and have some objective conversations.
They keep censoring those guys.
Mm-hmm.
I had an interesting conversation with my physical therapist yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Not very long, but I mentioned I haven't known anybody personally, you know, that had COVID or any any deaths since this whole thing started. I said, now you work in a hospital here. Surely you've run into somebody. You know what? He said, no, I don't know anyone.
Not possible. Not possible. I guess we're getting an echo every time you speak, Mr. Anderson.
Oh, darn it.
Am I going to have to... I thought I was muting myself, but that may not be working.
Are you muting yourself?
Yeah, I thought... Well,
and
no.
I'm echoing still?
With the hand mute.
Oh, shoot. Oh, we need a technical expert to help us fix this issue. I'll try not to talk too much.
Okay. The president said that he didn't really buy into Redfield. Redfield's a mask guy. He's a precautionary. You know, if I were a doctor and I never wanted to get into trouble, I never wanted to get sued for malpractice, would I be recommending masks? Would I be recommending astronaut suits? Would I be saying, well, you can't be careful enough? Isn't that what they're going to do? But when you find honest doctors out there that say, wait a minute, let's take a objective look at this. So the president questioned Redfield on his claims. I talked to Congressman, and I said, with all due respect, I'd like to request a second opinion. I want to get somebody in there like Gould. Somebody that is out there, and there are plenty of them, saying, wait a minute, the science doesn't necessarily confirm what you're saying. And we have the same thing with global warming, by the way. You don't dare, as a scientist, if you want to remain paid, the government funds billions of dollars, global warming research, which, by the way, is in the closet waiting to get back out. Once we get over this COVID, if we do our job out here, that's headed our way. So anyway, I would call your congressman or a congressman that you favor and say, help me out here. I want a second opinion. I want to have some objective. I want somebody that's objective going to Congress or going to a Senate panel and talking about this. And you have to ask your question and ask your senator or ask your congressman a question. Why isn't that happening? Well, the CDC is the authority. No, they're not. If you listen to the show at all, when we first started this exercise, I went to the CDC website and got the facts on the seasonal flu. And the facts were that between 26 and 62,000 people died of it. I'm going, whoa, wait a minute. What do you mean 26 to 62? You don't know? Did more research, did more reading? Yeah, they don't know. They're guessing. They're modeling like they do with the COVID, you know, the one that had all the millions of people dying in the USA. Those same modelers. Do your research and then call them and say, I want to know what is going on with COVID. I have a friend who killed himself the other day because he lost his business. I have a friend that has started drinking again. I know of a family that is broken up because of this. And it is causing stress in families, with friends, a community. Divide, 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 divide. So let's get the facts out there. And I think what we're going to find out, that at the very least, it is questionable. All the threats that we've had, all the dangers that we're facing is questionable. To include the vaccine. which was rushed. I certainly won't be standing in line to get that vaccine because I don't want to be a test rat. So you go ahead and be the test rat for me, okay? Human test rats are best, by the way. A test rat itself is an animal and may not really give us a good science, but you, please, and email me, let me know when you got the shot, and let's follow your health records after that. Let's see what happens. And mine as well, yes. I hear you, and mine as well. Thank you, number 7. It says right on the mask boxes, it does not protect from coronavirus. Right on the boxes. Yet, you can't get served in a lot of businesses now, and that's growing, because you don't have a mask on. Really? That makes sense, Hal? Huffington Post. This is part of that information control I've been talking about. 13 examples of Donald Trump being racist. By the way, a paradigm is a framework containing the basic assumptions, ways of thinking, and methodology that are commonly accepted by members of a community. Donald Trump attacked Muslim Gold Star parents. He claimed a judge was biased because he is Mexican. By the way, I'll get into headlines sometime this morning. One of the headlines is 3 brothers, including 2 illegal immigrants, accused of assaulting 10-year-old girl in Louisiana home. Has our crime increased or decreased due to illegal aliens? We can't ask that question, can we? Trespassers? The Justice Department sued his company twice for not renting to black people. In fact, discrimination against black people has been a pattern in his career. Accusations. He refused to condemn the white supremacists who are campaigning for him. He questioned whether President Obama was born in the United States. He trashed Native Americans too. He encouraged the mob justice that resulted in the wrongful imprisonment of the Central Park Five. He condoned the beating of Black Lives Matter protester. He called supporters who beat up homeless Latino man passionate. He stereotyped Jews and shared an anti-Semitic meme created by white supremacists, and his son-in-law is Jewish. Interesting. He treats African American supporters as tokens to dispel the idea that he's racist. Remember Joe Biden? If you don't vote for me, you ain't black. These are all prejudicial accusations. And we've already got enough of those in America, folks. We really do. I'm going to try to bring him on. Looks like we have Ryan from California on the line. Ryan, can you hear me okay?
Hey, Jim. Yeah, thanks for taking my call. How's it going?
What's on your mind this morning? It's gone, it's busy, and boy, it sure is going to get interesting, isn't it?
Well, I have to say it's a sign of incredible hope that Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who we may as well view as a communist because she worked for the ACLU and never should have been on the Supreme Court at all, but the fact that she passed away, and, for the Christians who are afraid to say it, I'll just flat out say it, she's definitely in hell. There's no doubt about that. So, I mean, if we read the Bible, God's very clear. He hates the wicked every single day, and he especially hates those who spread discord, division, and spread evil ideologies, which is exactly what she and her Talmudic comrades, which are, and no, you're not a white supremacist if you call out Talmudic types who are trying to control the world. That is not white supremacy. That is simply called justice. For every single person of every single race on this earth who objects to a small group of people trying to control the world, which is nothing new because the same people who killed Christ 2,000 years ago, that's exactly why they killed him, because he told them, you're never going to get your kingdom on this earth like you think you are. And that got him killed, and that got Jerusalem destroyed in 70 AD. But they're still hard at work, and the way they do it is with their lives. So, yeah, the fact that she passed away, that's, That's not a bad thing. She shouldn't have been on the Supreme Court, and neither should Breyer or Kagan or Sotomayor. All four of them are unfit to judge anything. They're all imposters. And we might as well throw John Roberts in there as well, because he is far from being a conservative. He's voted wrong on so many different issues. It's hard to keep track. And Trump's two appointments, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, have some pretty questionable rulings themselves. What should be on the Supreme Court is biblical, constitutional experts who have exemplary lives that are above reproach. That's who we should have on the Supreme Court. I just learned in the past 2 weeks that Woodrow Wilson had an affair with a woman when he was at Princeton. And when he got into the presidency, that affair was used to blackmail him, because Samuel Untermeyer, who was a very famous Talmudic Jew, lawyer, he approached Wilson and told him, hey, it would be really unfortunate if news of this affair of yours with this woman got out in public. She needs $40,000 right now because her son has a financial pressing need. She really loves him. She wants to have this need met. Otherwise, she doesn't know if she can remain quiet. He said, so I'll tell you what I'll do. I will put up the $40,000 for you, but the requirement is you have to appoint the Supreme Court justice that I tell you to the Supreme Court. Now, who was that justice? It was Brandeis, who was the first of a long line of Talmudic Jews who have been on that Supreme Court, and they have ruined that court. So, you see, it all started with blackmail because Woodrow Wilson didn't have good character. He should have just said, well, fine, go ahead and reveal this information. That's fine. That's what he should have done, but he didn't do that. Instead, he compromised, and our nation has been the worst for it ever since. So, yeah, well, and I don't know. I mean, if we were close to a war, civil war, before, we're even closer now because, the left is going to they're going to pull out all the stops. And just keep in mind, if you mention the real ideology that's behind this, which is very clear and proven, the ACLU was founded by, the majority of Jews are not involved in this, but unfortunately, Wilson, when he was elected, was supported by Talmudic bankers who set up the Federal Reserve, who controlled Brandeis, who have controlled the Supreme Court, our media, our schools, and our tech companies. And no, this does not mean you're a Hitler and you want to commit a Holocaust and you hate all Jews and you're a racist and a white supremacist. So no, it does not mean that, because it's unfortunate that when you tell the truth these days, you're met with a flurry of lies that are designed to bury you, with people hating you, thinking you're some kind of lunatic. My Yelp website for my business has been shut down for 5 years, and I see that I got 5 more messages on my site in the past 3-4 months saying the usual, that I'm a racist, white supremacist. People who have never been to my business, never talked to me, never been to a city council meeting, they'll come on there and lecture people about how racist and white supremacist I am. Of course, they're totally anonymous. So I would invite other Christians, to start telling the truth, so the rest of us don't have to take on all of this criticism, because we sure could use someone else taking the load off. It gets tiresome having to respond to the seemingly millions and millions of liars who they will do anything, including murder, to preserve their wealth and power. This is what they do. This is what they've done since King.
Ryan from California, and I hear you. And yes, when you speak like that, Ryan, some people are going to make assumptives about it. They need to do their research instead of being lazy. And there's a couple items I want to bring up. And thanks for the call, Ryan. A couple items I want to bring up.
Sure.
Number one, the Supreme Court is number one. In other words, it's controlling. It's not an elected office, but they are in essence controlling everything that happens in the United States. Take the example of Donald Trump. Wherever he tries something, the first thing he's got to think about is, what's the Supreme Court going to do with this? Who's going to go take this to the Supreme Court, and who's going to freeze it when I try to do something? Number two, and maybe you can help this, Ryan, and I'm going to have to let you go, but is there a Christian on the Supreme Court?
So I think, because what you have the Talmudic Jews who vote left-wing, and that's going to be your Breyer, Kagan, and Ginsburg, who just passed away. Then you have the Catholics who have varying ideologies. So Clarence Thomas, last I checked, he was a Catholic, but he's a staunch. I would say Clarence Thomas is the closest thing to a Christian on the Supreme Court right now. I'm pretty convinced about that. Then you have Alito, who's kind of a lukewarm Christian conservative. Then you got John Roberts, who has no idea what conservatism and Christian is, and just seemingly makes up things out of thin air to support leftist ideologies. And the other thing I just want to say, I'm extremely bothered by the many people on the right wing, especially in the right-wing conservative Christian media, who praise Ruth Bader Ginsburg. You should not be praising Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
I was going crazy this morning. Listen to Fox News. Rock star was a term that they used. Rock star.
This is, you know, and if you see, like, I get, you know, we want to be kind and gracious to our enemies, but you know what? When David was kind and gracious, he did mourn for 3 people who tried to kill him. He mourned for Saul, he mourned for Abner, and he mourned for Absalom. But you know what those 3 men did not do? They did not openly stomp on God's command like Ruth Bader Ginsburg and many like her are doing. So there's a big difference here. There's enemies that, you know, maybe they fought against us and we had differences. Then there's enemies who hate God and God hates them. Well, I would not dare to praise someone like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I would not, because you know what? The people doing that, I can guarantee you, you're not making friends with God when you speak good of people who hate God. That is not, you know, the Bible is very clear. Proverbs 6 says God hates, and he starts listing the 6 things that God hates. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg and the Democrats are every single one of those things.
Right.
So, I mean, yes, we're going to be kind to people as much as possible. But as far as Christians go, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh are lukewarm. We do need a diehard, as I go out here, biblical, constitutional Christian, not a woman, not Amy Coney Barrett. I hear more people saying put a woman on. No, we don't need a woman. We need a male Christian, conservative, biblical, historically versed man on the Supreme Court.
You're making all kinds of friends this morning, Ryan. I got to let you go. We got another caller coming in. We got to take a quick break. After we take the break, thank you, Ryan. God bless you. After we take the break, we're going to bring Roger online. So, Mr. Anderson, if you would.
Last call with BJ Edwards. Real talk about real life.
Code 745353. We have another caller on the line, Roger, and I want to get to the headlines sometimes today. Roger, can you hear us okay?
Good, Jim. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you sound like you're on a speaker, but we can get through that.
He's far away.
Well, I'm out in the garage trying to get ready to cut some grass, so I thought I'd pause here. Ruth,
Do you have grass in your garage? Never mind. Go ahead.
what's that?
Do you have grass in your garage?
Ruth?
Go.
No, I don't. Ruth Bader Ginsburg. This is the U.S. Supreme Court Justice who publicly said on more than one occasion, we should look at the laws of other countries and their constitution and utilize their case law to make determinations in America. This is what she was. Forget about her pro-killing babies position. This woman sat on the United States Supreme Court and said our U.S. Constitution wasn't enough, that we should look to other nations and their laws and use their court decisions to make decisions in America. This is who she is.
Was.
Rock star. A rock star, Roger.
Well, and then we hear that this morning I heard someplace that we need a moderate. Oh, she wasn't a moderate. She was the head of the ACLU, I think either in New York City or in the United States. She was no moderate that came onto the court. She was a flaming leftist, feminist, liberal who, unfortunately, I think if she could speak from the grave, and I'm going to try to be kind here, might be enlightening us right now a whole lot about some things.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. But come on, Roger. We have to compromise here. We need to learn to work with others. Come on, and compromise the truth.
Compromise. If the Republican Party doesn't understand what is at stake, and does not approve her appointment soon, her replacement, we're dumber than we think we are. The people elect presidents. Presidents nominate Supreme Court justices. That's how it is.
Let the fun
Other
begin.
than that, have a good day.
Let the fun begin. It's already starting, folks. You see? I'm telling you, this is just, we're just scratching the surface here, folks. Just scratching the surface. I want to get back a little bit to the news media and how they control things. There was an article on CNN written by Megan Vasquez. I think she graduated from New York University maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Still wet behind the ears. But the intent in terms of her article was just incredible. Trump rails against liberal indoctrination of America's youth in latest culture war salvo. She continues, Donald Trump railed against what he described as a liberal indoctrination of America's youth during a Constitutional Day speech on Thursday, marking his latest attempt to inflame the culture wars raging in America ahead of the election. This is all Donald Trump's fault. In a speech rife with race baiting and dog whistles, the president described left-wing mobs, probably talking about maybe Portland or someplace in Wisconsin or Minneapolis, and claimed their tactics were comparable to anti-American propaganda used by foreign adversaries, which is exactly right on. Exactly right on. This is prejudice, folks. This is jury tampering. So what does this young, wet behind the ears CNN scribus justify her assertions? Well, Trump said we must be clear away the web of twisted lies in our schools and classrooms and teach our children the magnificent truth about our country. That's awful to say that. Isn't that awful to say that? We want our sons and daughters to know that they are citizens of the most exceptional nation in the history of the world. Shame on him. He also claimed that the left is attempting to destroy Martin Luther King Jr.'s vision for every child not to be judged by their skin color, but by the content of their character. Trump's remark reinforced themes his campaign and his base, you and I, have rallied behind in months ahead of the 2020 election. It's called The Truth. Then the CNN scribe continues her gaslighting amid waves of demonstrations protesting police brutality and racism against black Americans this year. The campaign labeled protesters as thugs. Did you see the fires, darling? And categorized attempts to reconsider established narratives about the history of racism and slavery in the United States as unpatriotic perversions of American history. She continues. During his speech, Trump directly blamed the school curriculum for the violence as it resulted from some of the protests, saying that left-wing rioting and mayhem are the direct result of decades of left-wing indoctrination in our public schools. Well, duh. As you sow, so shall you reap. Public schools teach life has no meaning, morals are relative, man, not God, is the measure of all things, and the state is your daddy. What could go wrong with that, right? The president also called the New York Times 1619 Project, which you could say rewriting of history. She calls, and it is, a Pulitzer Prize-winning project aimed at teaching American students about slavery. Toxic propaganda. That's what Trump calls it, which it is. But the Times claims it's a landmark, groundbreaking journalism. Presupposing that this project has deepened many readers' understanding of the nation's past and forced an important conversation about the lingering effects of slavery and its centrality to the American story. We're proud of it, and we will continue this vital journalism. New York Times. Trump said the U.S. Department of Education will investigate whether California schools are using the New York Times 1619 Project in public school curriculum, while announcing that he would establish a national commission to promote patriotic education called the 1776 Commission. Rewriting history. And they don't like Donald Trump going, whoa, hold on there a second. Pilgrim, that ain't happening. History is what history is. While announcing that he would be establishing a national commission, our liberal CNN writer then concludes, in his speech, the president also railed against racial sensitivity training, that's indoctrination, darling, and claimed that the college students are inundated with teachings related to critical race theory. Most of you know what that is. The Trump administration recently banned federal agencies from conducting racial sensitivity training related to white privilege and the aforementioned critical race theory. The voices advising Trump, specifically top members of his administration and his cabinet, are exceedingly white. Thought we weren't looking at skin color here. And comments among top officials and the president himself have been frequently criticized for being racially insensitive and tone deaf. We have a difficult time swallowing the truth, folks. That's what we're saying here. A very difficult time swallowing the truth. It's a big lump in our American throat. This insanity has to stop. We have to have a respect for the truth. I guess I'll go across headlines. Maybe we ought to take a quick break, Mr. Anderson, before I do the headlines. I was talking with Neil yesterday, and we could do a 4-hour show with just Neil and I talking. He's an incredible man. He's an incredible man. EBLM.information. Every black life matters. Life matters. Coming up. Headlines. Facebook pulls conservative ad calling out Biden policies that allow men in women's sports. Your information is going to be so selective, folks. So selective. If Trump wins this election, we might consider it a miracle. He who controls the information controls the world, right? Headline, Black Lives Matter co-founder fundraising for pro-communist Chinese party. Surprise, surprise. Alicia Garza, the co-founder of Black Lives Matter, who was named by a cohort as a trained Marxist, appears to be openly fundraising for a group which openly affiliates with the Chinese Communist Party. Here's a good one. Federal court rules Pennsylvania lockdowns were unconstitutional. Bring that west. Bring that west to Ohio, brother. How about this? Solar panels generate mountains of waste. And just another headline, just how trustworthy are the COVID-19 case counts? And no cause for alarm, headline. It's just that some North Carolina voters received multiple ballots. Can I vote for my kids too? Debs call Trump a mass murdering racist. His poll numbers rise. That was from Larry Elder. Trump announces military will help administer Wuhan coronavirus vaccine. friendsoflibertyunited.com. friendsoflibertyunited.com. And then U.S. ushers in peace in the Middle East. I'm sure you've heard it. The U.S. helped usher in a new era of peace in the Middle East. But I can tell you right now, Israel's enemies are committed to hostility. COVID criminals. Nashville officials buried numbers showing very low infections in order to gaslight the public over need to keep bars and restaurants shut down. EU controls the information. I am a huge Cleveland Browns fan. And Mrs. BJ is a big Bengals fan.
Who dey?
As is Mr. Anderson, I guess. So what did we do Thursday night when Cleveland was playing Cincinnati? We watched the series Major Crimes, mainly because there was no national anthem before every show, where indoctrinated men openly disrespect our nation. If we wanted to see that type of activity, we'd likely move to Portland or Wisconsin or Minnesota or... In the midst of the falling ratings in the NFL, football legend Herschel Walker offers some wise words of warning to all those players who are using the game's airtime to protest and promote their political grievances. If you have the right to protest, then fans also have the right to protest by booing and changing the channel. I suggest that Herschel Walker be made the new NFL commissioner because that obvious truth apparently never even dawned on Roger Goodell. Speaking of the NFL, how about a salute for the Pittsburgh Steelers tackle Alejandro Villanueva for having the guts to defy peer pressure and group think. The very strange way to make your point. I was talking about Portland, Minneapolis. And this should come as no surprise to you. But it is now official. The riots following George Floyd's death are the costliest in U.S. history. The riots in 140 cities in the first 2 weeks has resulted in up to $2 billion in paid insurance claims. And that doesn't count all the people who didn't have insurance or whose policies didn't cover rioting. It should be emphasized that most of the destruction happened in black neighborhoods, destroyed black-owned businesses, and killed 26 people. Most of them black. It's a very strange way to make the point that Black Lives Matter. There are other details out there, folks. Other details. Racism, my friends, exists because we keep speaking it into existence. You can speak good into existence. You can speak bad into existence. Words are powerful. And that's kind of how we were created, wasn't it, Mr. Anderson? Were we created by words? When the world created by words? Didn't God do something interesting to get us all here?
He spoke and there was a big bang.
Big bang.
The beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God.
Yep.
The Word was God.
Yep. I think, and we're going to talk a lot about this in the next hour. I think there's a paranoia out there that's being spoken into existence. Again, racism will end when we stop speaking it into existence. And it's not going to end any sooner. James David Manning is a black pastor from Harlem who asked a very interesting question the other day on Facebook. The question: why is it that LeBron James and other well-paid black athletes always move into racist white neighborhoods? when they should simply be moving into the hood, if you know what I mean. I'm not normally a conspiracy theorist, but on this issue, I'm all in with the racist conspiracy theory. Not that it exists, racism, but that it is a manufactured fantasy that has plagued this nation for decades. I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and there were some radical changes at the time. In 64, Lyndon Baines Johnson I put economic slavery on a large group of people. And America has never been the same. And we were coming out of a very rugged period. Drinking fountains, restaurants, back of the bus. The president, again, I grew up in 50s and 60s. The president of my senior class was black. And I was in a rural community. How could that happen? Maybe why did that happen? We mentioned critical race theory earlier. It sees racism as something new in the world that was born with European imperialism, colonialism, capitalism, and rationalism. And we've got a new book, which is really churning this up, called White Fragility. Why it's so hard for white people to talk about racism. We are speaking, continually speaking, feeding it racism into existence. All of America, regardless of your nationality. Readers are told in the book that white identity is inherently racist, and that the white collective fundamental hates blackness. And of course, we mentioned the New York Times revisionist 1619 project. That was published last year and attributed to more than 3,500 K-12 classrooms. Similarly instructs that anti-black exists. We need to dialogue on this, but we need to have an objective dialogue. And there's a lot of interference coming in here. The interference is coming from the news media, it's coming from politicians, it's coming from our educational institutions, and it's jury tampering, that process. And this has to stop. I'll tell you one thing that could have stopped it. I don't know whether it still can, but that's the church. As goes the family, so goes the church. And as goes the church, so goes the nation. I remember a conversation with Candace Owens in what could have been a riotous meeting that she had. And it was getting pretty intense until the subject of families was brought up. And once that subject was brought up, immediately you could almost hear a pin drop. Why? Because everyone, regardless of nationality, skin color, inherently knows the critical importance of the family. And when you go through segments of society and you take a look at the fathers in the home or not in the home, there's a direct relationship between success. And by the way, there's a direct relationship between prisons, inmates, and their homes. And a huge, huge association. We could talk about the education. We could talk about the values. We can talk about crimes. But the critical importance of the family. It's overlooked. It's just incredible how quickly that's overlooked. Mr. Anderson, I'm looking at a break coming up, a hard break. Am I not? I think.
Keeping you informed. This is Last Call with BJ Edwards.
And we have a couple special guests on today. I can't wait to get back into discussion with Neil. Neil and I were in contact this week, and he talked to me about a new project he was working on. And it's called Every Black Life Matters. And I'm going, whoa, what are you doing here, Neil? Wait a minute, hold this up. I'm not too awfully sure you and I are going to have a good conversation. You know, my wife and I were sitting by the fire last night. We got a fire pit. And she turned to me and said, what do you know about Black history? And I really don't have all that much information about it. I mean, other than what I've lived through. What happened? How did we get to the situation we got to today? How did we get here? And that's a great question. And then she said, was Christopher Columbus a racist? Wow. I really don't know. Why don't you bring our guests on? Kevin McGary and Neil Mammen. And they're from EBLM.information.
Hello there, BJ.
Good morning, guys. Good morning.
How's it going?
Glad to have you on board. I'm blessed. And I'm really excited about bringing y'all on today. And I guess we'll start in the beginning, and that is, Neil, you like to write books. You like to get engaged in church and politics. So did you have some free time where you just said, I need to do something? I don't have enough to do. Is that what you did?
Yeah, my wife was asking me, don't you have enough to do?
Oh boy. Oh boy.
So yeah, it was a dire need. It was really necessary. It was something that we had to get done. And what had happened was obviously the riots and everything going on. And all my friends kind of split into two. I had Christian friends who were jumping on the BLM bandwagon. I had churches jumping on the BLM bandwagon, and I had pastors who were kind of walking delicately around the thing, but you could tell that they really felt compelled to jump on it, but just weren't. And then obviously the more we looked into BLM, the worse it sounded. And then more recently it came out that, they all practice witchcraft, or they have witchcraft origins. And, Abraham Hamilton, a friend of ours, kind of came up with that and kind of exposed that. So
BLM you're talking about, right?
We're talking about BLM, right?
BLM, okay.
So
not EBLM.
Not EBLM, right? So I reached out to Kevin and I said, Kevin, you're the president of the Frederick Douglass Foundation in California. We have to do something, and I guess the rest is history, shall we say?
Yeah. Kevin, welcome on board. Are you the quiet one?
Yes, I am, sir. I am. And it's a pleasure to be here. As Neil said, our origins really started when, after Terry Crews had a candid conversation with Don Lemon on CNN. And Terry was saying that there's so much happening in the Black community, but yet BLM is strictly focused in on this one area of police brutality. And Don Lemon says, well, look, that's a fact. There's strictly police brutality. If you want to do something more than police brutality, start something else. And that really, sort of sent Neil and I down the trajectory. And we said, look, there's plight in every phase of Black life. And really, there's no organizations that are focused in on helping, supporting, encouraging Blacks through those phases. In other words, the first most onerous and ominous phase is at conception. And we know now, because Planned Parenthood just admitted a few weeks ago that they are systemically racist, that their founder was systemically racist, the eugenicist, Margaret Sanger. And so plight in the womb is very, very real for Black families. And then
every Black Lives Matter, right?
Every single Black
unborn
life,
or born. Okay.
From the womb to natural death, every Black life matters.
And you can see that in our logo itself.
Yes.
Right? If you look at the center of the logo behind Kevin there, you'll see the baby in the womb.
There you go. Yeah, okay. Cool. I love it. Go ahead.
So I was just saying that from the womb to natural death, there's all kinds of there's all phases of Black life, and there's various barriers potentially at every phase, and we wanted to be able to stand up for Black life at every phase of Black life, not just police brutality. Of course, when those instances occur, we'll call them out, but that is a very, very narrow slice of Black life. So.
Okay. So what is the difference between, how do you define, when I see BLM, regardless of what's in front of it, the E or EFGHIKJK, I still get hung up on the BLM. What's the difference here? I mean, you're talking about all lives, but are you talking about reparations as well?
No. So let me help you here. We've all seen commercials or heard commercials where they talk about no lives matter or until Black lives matter. And we take it a level more granular. Black lives don't matter until every single Black life matters. So we're a level much more granular than that. What that means for us is we looked at the issues that really help accelerate success in Black life. That being nuclear family, a father in the home, is huge for Black life. Additionally, educational choice is huge for Black life. So when you look at what we're doing compared to BLM is anti-nuclear family, anti-heteronormative, whatever that means, anti-father in the home, anti-school choice, pro-Planned Parenthood, pro-Marxist. We realize that having a free market economy and capitalism, that's the number one lever that allows us to see great athletes and great entrepreneurs and business owners like Steve Harvey and Oprah and all the others that we know across the country. So we should emphasize capitalism and free markets as opposed to saying that we're going to embrace Marxism. So we're the antithesis, if you will, of BLM.
And then we also want to go a step further. I mean, one of the problems with BLM is it's actually creating race problems. So EBLM does not believe that there are multiple races. We believe there's only one race, and that is the human race. We believe there are multiple ethnicities and multiple cultures. So you could have a person of an ethnicity that would be African American ethnicity, or in my case, Indian of African origin ethnicity, but our cultures could be vitally different. For instance, I could take a Black kid who grew up in the streets in Chicago and a Black kid in Silicon Valley right here who grew up with his dad working for Amazon. They have the same ethnicity, but completely different cultures. So we have to understand that we are all the same race. We just have different ethnicities and different cultures. And that is not a dividing thing. And the problem with what BLM is doing is they're saying, look, it's Black against white. Everybody's systemically racist. And what this brings in is what is taught by the Marxists as critical race theory. And if you know the history of critical race theory, it was actually brought about by the Marxists almost started in the 30s and especially in the 50s in colleges, where they realized that the only way to bring down America would be to cause a race fight, a race war. There was no other way because America was so strong, so powerful that the only way to get America was to break it down through race and violence. And that's exactly what BLM is doing. And so what we're saying is, no, that's wrong. What are the real causes of these problems? As Kevin noted, I mean, if you think about it, the average the average African American youth between the age of 16 to 28 is not a felon, but the average murder is done by someone who looks like him. And I disciple a young man here who's African American. I said, look, I trust you. I trust you in my life. But when you walk into a store or you walk in front of a police officer, they might say, look, this guy fits the demographic of the person who commits the most murders. It turns out 53% of murders in America are committed by African Americans, mainly on African Americans too. But the issue is that brings in a bias. So how do we change that? Well, we change that by not allowing the breakup of a family. Why is that kid in that position? He's in that position because he didn't have a father growing up, and he had gang, and therefore he gravitates towards gangs. There's another reason he can't get out of that situation is because of the inner school problem, and he doesn't have a choice. He doesn't have a school voucher that he can go to a different school. So what are the real problems that are causing this, what they call systemic racism or this systemic bias or whatever? Well, the causes are Marxist philosophies that broke up the family. Go back, way back when welfare was started. LBJ goes in there and he says, look, I'm going to provide free welfare, but hey, if there's a father in the home, you don't get money. So guess what? All of a sudden, you go back in the 60s, there was a father and a grandfather in the home and everything. Fast forward to the 80s, all of a sudden what? You have kids growing up with no adult, no sponsors. And if there are adults around, they're probably just coming out of jail or something, because in the 80s, Biden goes in and he starts this crime bill, which basically targets African-American kids and puts them in jail. Rather than trying to figure out the reason for that, he says, I don't want my kids growing up in a racial jungle. Well, that's exactly what he created.
Neil, there's a bad guy here. Or bad guys. Who are they? Who are the bad guys? Who's causing all this trouble?
Well, so you asked, you did ask a question about systemic racism. So I have a quantifiable, analytical answer to that. So there is systemic racism. I found two organizations that perfectly fit that narrative. It is not law enforcement. And the reason why it's not law enforcement is because, according to the left, people of color cannot be racist because they don't have power. So if we take that into consideration and recognize that all law enforcement across the country are made up of over 63% minorities, people of color. When you take it from the administration all the way through to the ranks, over 63% are people of color. So therefore, it cannot be systemically racist. Systemic is up, down, in, out, through, and through. But there are two organizations I found, because I was really, really curious as to whether there was any entities that actually fit that definition. The one organization actually started in the early 1800s. They provided, they actually encouraged additional slavery and additional slave trading. They actually encouraged, they actually put judges on the bench that would be progressive and that would provide cover for Jim Crow laws, black codes, Dred Scott decisions, and all of that. They put additional progressive judges on the bench that would allow the KKK to escape being brought to justice while they maimed, lynched, and killed and targeted blacks. That organization then also, when eugenics became popular in the 1950s and 60s, they aligned with eugenics movement and encouraged the decimation of black communities via eugenics, abortion, and that. So that one organization is still alive and well today. And that organization is the Democrat Party. So historically, culturally, systemically, even to this very day, most of all of their ranks are made up of whites certainly at the highest rank in the House and the Senate. And they actually fit the systemic racist call. Now, the other organization is an organization that started with eugenics, and actually the person who really allowed that movement to accelerate in earnest in the United States said, we don't want the word to get out that we want to exterminate the Negro populations. And then that organization started, was all white. Even to this day, it's grossly majority white. And they actually put all of their facilities in 80 to 90% of Black communities to this very day, targeting Blacks for extermination. That organization is, of course, Planned Parenthood. So by definition, the leftist definition, it is not law enforcement that's systemically racist. By their own definition, it's the Democrat Party and Planned Parenthood.
And marriage made in heaven, right?
Yeah, all right.
Hey, we're going to have to take a quick, Neil, I hold that thought. We're going to take a quick break, and then we come back. I want to hear more about this. I want to hear a little bit more about how folks could maybe support EBLM, the website. So let's take just a real quick break, just identify who we are. And we are back. We were back with Neil Mammen and Kevin McGary of EBLM and having a very interesting conversation. We just found out about a marriage between Planned Parenthood and the Democrat Party. What do you mean, just found out about that? That's been going on for years, right? Yeah. Hey, you're on my favorite subject, and we just can't get away from it, and that's the family and how critically important it is. And I do want to hear about EBLM, but when you tear up a family, if you look at the Communist Manifesto or the Homosexual Manifesto, you look at Marxists, in order to get to where they need to get to, the family is the last place where a society can be defended. Once you lose the family, then you can say goodbye. That's what happened in Rome. That's what happened in Greece. Every great society, Rome lost because they stopped having babies. They stopped having children. Yeah. So they had to bring in labor.
Slaves.
Yeah. And bingo, there it is. So a little bit about EBLM. How can we support you? And what would you say your main goal is?
Go ahead, Kevin. I'll let you take that one.
Okay. So everybblacklifematters.info is our website. everybblacklifematters.info. On the website, you'll see our mission, our vision, our various projects, and donations and subscription pages. So you can help us by going to the website and subscribing to our newsletters and donating to our cause. Now, why would you want to donate? We're going to be the only organization in America that's going to, specifically in this realm, that's going to come alongside of those families that have been terrorized by the reality that their babies have been slaughtered overnight via stray bullets. That happens every weekend, most of our major cities, of course, Chicago, New York, Detroit, Memphis, large major urban areas. Those parents wake up in the morning about to make breakfast for their toddlers and their young children, and they go to the toddlers area and realize that a stray bullet killed them overnight. The reality is that is a shock that no parent can endure on their own and would want to endure. Regrettably, while BLM has accumulated over $2 billion in donations, they're not doing anything to help these families that are going through this level of trauma, sorrow, and grief. So we're going to come alongside of those families. We're going to provide them with immediate support to help them to bury their now lost loved ones. We're going to provide emotional and financial support. going to help them to build those GoFundMe pages immediately, and help them to transition during this season of grief and sorrow. So that's one of our main missions. The other main mission is we're going to stand up for fatherhood programs. We're going to be working with organizations like the Douglas Leadership Institute, of which I'm executive on as well. And we have a fatherlessness initiative that we're already doing with the Douglas Leadership Institute. The Woodson Institute also has some initiatives. We're going to be partnering with those organizations to help communities, fathers in these communities, to really recognize the difference that they could make if they were to just remain connected to their children. And the difference is exponential. It's life-saving. And so we're going to be doing that. Additionally, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be marching and protesting against the systemically racist, by their own definition and by their own admission, Planned Parenthood. We're going to be partnering with Students for Life and other organizations, and we're going to actually have peaceful, marches to the Planned Parenthood organizations. We're going to hold them accountable for their systemic racism that they've admitted, Planned Parenthood in New York just recently, that they continue to engage in. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to stand up for educational choices, school choice programs, vouchers, and those types of things. The two determinants that are really fundamental to Black life and success in Black life is, number one, a father in the home, or at least a father connected to that child. And number two, educational choice programs, giving Black children, as opposed to relegating them specifically and strictly to public education, allowing them to actually participate in various forms of education, charter schools, private schools, whatever the case may be, that would actually help that child learn better and grow successfully. So those are all the, and then of course we're going to stand up and continue to help our president and lawmakers continue to produce second, third phases of criminal justice reforms that would make a difference for reuniting families and help in that regard as well. So we're looking at a holistic approach to Black life, not a very narrow approach that Black Lives Matter and some other organizations are currently doing.
More love-based,
yes,
than hate-based.
Right, and solutions-based. We're looking at the underlying causes of the problem and saying, we're not just going to blame people. We're not going to blame white people or what. We're just going to say, look, the real cause of the problems are these. Well, let's fix the real cause of the problem. One thing that Kevin kind of glossed over is also we want to try and change the welfare laws. The welfare laws should not punish the father for staying in the home. Right? I mean, we think the church should be coming in and providing charity, but until that point, the government should not be creating problems. And the government always creates problems, right?
Where is the church in all this, Neil? I mean, they've just, it's been very disappointing. I mean, I spent a good bit of my activist career trying to get pastors to speak relevant sermons, to speak out against the things that are happening in society. Right. And it's like pushing a wet noodle up a hill. I mean, I did this for 15 years. Right. All I got was a seat in a courthouse where I was being kept out from away from the church.
Well, as you know from my last book, from my book, Jesus is Involved in Politics, Why Aren't You? Why Isn't My Church? This has been the fight I started on when I first wrote that book. I came here as an immigrant from Africa. I grew up there and was really shocked to see what Americans were doing by letting their country go to hell in a handbag, if you will. And obviously the solution to that is to have the churches and the pastors preach about it. And so I've been fighting that battle, as you know, and the problem is pastors are, I think, afraid, because when I talk to pastors, they don't think it's their role. And I think it's, it's like 40, 50 years of the Johnson doctrine, the 501c3. So pastors are literally petrified that they're going to lose their 501c3. But there's also another fear they have. They're afraid that if they preach about moral issues and things like that, everybody who's liberal will leave the church and they won't hear the gospel, right? And here's my question to them, and I always ask this question. I say, look, if you don't preach about abortion, you don't preach about the sexuality and the morals and all the things that are happening today. What's going to happen is that these people will never, the people who are Christians will never know the truth. But more than that, imagine that you're in the 1850s, and you believe that slavery is wrong, and you believe that slavery should be stopped, and there is a slave owner in your audience, or there is a slave or a pro-slavery person in your audience, are you going to say, I'm not going to preach about that because they may not hear the gospel? I mean, how can you say, here's a moral error that's going on? And I want to add one more thing to that. I mean, and I found out, I had a friend whose parents were really liberal, and they went to a church that's actually pastored by a friend of mine, and he never talks about these things. And I said, oh, so your parents have been going to this church? He said, yeah, they're really liberal. I'm surprised that they're going to this church. And then a few weeks later, she said, well, my parents left that church. I said, why? She said, oh, the pastor said something that insulted them. And I said, what? There's no way. He would never touch anything that insulted them. So I went back and I listened to that sermon. There was nothing in that sermon that would have insulted them. There was probably like a little hint about something, and they took that as insult. And I said, look, people who hate the truth are going to find any excuse to avoid it. You can't preach to that crowd. You got to preach the truth, the word of God. Jesus was never afraid of preaching the truth. John the Baptist was never afraid of preaching the truth. Paul was never afraid of preaching the truth. They were beaten. They were thrown out. I mean, we have to do that. And yeah, so if people leave, they leave. But you know what? At least the truth is out there and people will hear the truth. Now, you can do it in love. You don't have to do it in hate. You can say, look, I understand that you might feel differently. And I've had situations where I've talked against abortion, and I've had people come and say, look, I disagree with you, but you really approach that in a loving way. I understand why you think that. So I think that pastors need to wake up and do that. And I think that here's my big fear. I'll tell you this. I mean, America used to be the greatest evangelistic nation in the world, the greatest missionary nation in the world, the greatest giving nation in the world, the greatest, if you will, the greatest example of true freedom in the world. And what are we tending towards? One day God's going to come up and say, look, instead of, I gave you this nation that did all these amazing things, and what did you leave me with? You gave me a nation that rather than sending out missionaries, needs missionaries, rather than being evangelistic, bans evangelism, rather than allowing the Bible to be preached, teaches the Bible as though it's something horrible, and rather than being the richest nation in the world, now we need to send people to provide you with help and aid. What have you left me with? And it's this parable of the 10 talents. Pastors, what are you doing with this nation that God gave you? And this is the breakdown of the family is the beginning of that. The breakdown of the churches is the second part of that. And I think that it's time that people woke up.
Churches are composed of families, and this is a cultural war.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is a war.
Yeah, absolutely.
And here's the deal. Normally, let's say you're playing football or you're playing baseball, you want that to be a home game. This is a game that we don't want in the home or the church. We want to fight this outside there, because if we wait until this game gets to our homes, look out. We've already gone too far.
Absolutely. And remember, it says the gates of hell will not prevail. It doesn't say the gates of heaven will prevail. So where are the gates of hell? They're in hell. They're at hell, right? You have to go to that place. It's not our gates. It's their gates that are going to fall apart.
Get it? Hey, we've got a caller, but I think let's take a quick break, Mr. Anderson, and then we'll get to a caller. Might have a question for our guest.
Keeping you informed. This is Last Call with BJ Edwards.
And I've got some questions for y'all as well, but I'm going to go ahead and put Roger on. Roger, can you hear us okay?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can. We can. Do you have a question for our guest?
Great. I think he made a comment that stirred in me a minute ago about on some of these cultural issues. They would be afraid of not being able to share the gospel, but I think that's being too kind to them. I think they'd be afraid of not being able to make the budget. With the average person giving 1 or 2% of their tithe, and many people give.
I think Roger's mowing his lawn.
Yeah, we lost him for a second there. We can't hear you, BJ.
Like you said.
Did you ask the question?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Any comments with regards to Roger and his dog?
Well, I think that's definitely part of the issue there. Part of the issue is that they're afraid that they'll lose money. But I think that the reality is that if you don't preach the word of God, then what is your purpose? If it's just a business and you don't trust God for providing for you and taking care of you when you preach the truth, I mean, I think that there's an issue there. I think that people will stand up and rise up and protect you and defend you. In fact, I'm looking right now at churches here in the Valley that have decided to open. In fact, I go to an illegal church. It's interesting to say that. You know, I grew up in a place where you could have an illegal church in the Middle East and in Sudan. And here we are at an illegal church. Why? Because of COVID-19's laws and regulations are made to shut down the church. Well, when we went to that church, there were only 300 people about a month ago. Well, today there's almost like 900. Tomorrow when we go there, but there'll be 1,000. It's growing every week. It's been growing by 100, 200 people. So that church is growing, and our pastor stands up there and he preaches the truth and he preaches the word. In fact, we had an altar call. We had 20 people come to the Lord 2 weeks ago, and then 3 weeks before that, we had a baptism call. In your clothes, come and get baptized in your clothes. 44 people. It's Calvary Chapel, San Jose. If you're listening to this and you're in the San Jose area, come down to Calvary Chapel, San Jose. They've been hit with like $50,000 to $75,000 in fines by the city. We're not going to pay it, but the reality is when you stand up for that, people see that beacon and they come out to you. And the non-Christians might say, oh, look, what are they doing? They're violating the law. Well, I think there's a higher law that we have. And I think that if we observe that, people will see that light. The other thing I wanted to add, too, since we're on this topic, there is a tendency for people to think that the church is in descendancy, that we're actually going downhill. And I like to tell the story. If I were to tell you that there were 17%, only 17% of the country attends church, and a woman in New York is more likely to be pregnant out of wedlock than to attend a church service, what decade do you think that would be? Now, most people look at that. Go ahead. Were you going to answer? Try that, BJ?
Got to unmute yourself.
I'd say we're going to have to go contemporary with that.
Yeah, you'd think 1980, 1990, maybe 2020. Well, the year was 1776. That statistic is from the year 1776. If you want to look that up, look up Rodney Stark's book. And in 1776, less than 17% attended church. And yet we got one of the most godliest constitutions ever in the history of the entire world, the entire civilization. We had a few people who were dedicated to the fact. Any way you look at it today, over 46% attended church. 46%. Now we know that everybody who doesn't attend church is not everybody who attends church is not a Christian. Many of those denominations are liberal, but you know what? The liberal denominations are tiny compared to the evangelistic. And they say all these churches are losing people. No, not the evangelical and the charismatic ones. They are growing by leaps and bounds. And in fact, even the Orthodox Church is growing by leaps and bounds. So we're sitting here, we're looking at maybe 24% of evangelistic Christians in this nation. That's far more than even the people who went to church in 1776. And here we are hiding in our homes, hiding in our behind the walls of our church, and we're thinking that the end is coming. There are more people in the world who are Christians today than have ever been before in the history of the entire world. 34% of the world is Christian, and that we've never had that many Christians in the world before, that percentage. It's always been under 30. In fact, at times it's been under 5, right? It's been growing steadily. We have now a huge majority in the world. So I think we should stop being afraid and start standing up. And EBLM is one of those things. We are out there saying, look, let's take the fight to them. If they say Black Lives Matter, we say, yes, every Black life matters. If they say, we care about the police brutality, we say, yes, we care more than police brutality. We care about the Black kids. 30% of all the Black kids are killed in the home. We care about the fact that black kids don't have a choice to go to school and they're stuck in these gang infested rooms. We care about that black kids are stuck in gangs because they don't have a father. We care about the fact that that the whole system that the Democrat Party has created is basically to attack. Do you care about Black Lives Matter? Well, we care about it, and we're doing something. What are you doing about it? And I think when you say that, people are either frightened or they realize that they don't have an argument. And I think that's a beacon.
Several years ago, I think it was when we first formed the Natural Family Foundation, I got together, I think Mr. Anderson was there with me, with a group of black leaders in Columbus, Ohio. And we had a lunch, and conversation ensued, and I started to get into the conversation about families. And then I started to get in the conversation about fatherless families. And I'll be honest with you, these were leaders in the community. It started to get a little warm at that meeting. It started to get very warm at that meeting. I thought they were going to lynch me, to be honest with you. I mean, they were not happy with me at all. And I was trying to bring out, here's what has to happen. And this was a conversation with Mrs. BJ last night. There's nothing I, as a white guy, can really do here. Because every time I say something, it's going to be interpreted as racist. No matter what I say, no matter who I support. It's just going to be interpreted as racist. So I have to somehow, and like bringing you fellas onto the show, and help enable the black community, because that's where it has to happen. The leadership, and by the way, that's how this nation is going to get out of the mess we're in. That leadership to get the nation out of where we need to go from is going to have to come from the black community.
Yes.
It's not going to happen in a white community. And it's called discrimination, and it's because you're white. It just ain't going to happen.
Yes.
And that's it pains me to say that, and even to say it, it might, somebody sees me on the street, they might pain me for saying it, but it's the truth, daggone it, and it does reside in the families. The foundation that you build a nation on is the family. It doesn't make any difference what color it is, or even what religion you are. To be honest with you, the church, the base for the church is the family.
Yes.
The church, I believe, was an outgrowth of the family. When God created the family, it was the first institution he created for the benefit of man. The others followed, and it is core. And when I get into discussions with groups, whether I'm a member of several groups, whether they be constitutional, whatever they are, pro-life, I always want to bring it back to the conversation of the family, because that's where it all starts, and that's where it all ends. I'm sorry,
Absolutely.
I was editorializing there.
And let me jump in here before I want Kevin to answer that part, the part of that. But you know how it is. It's like I can slap my brother for being bad, but you better not touch him, right? You're not family. You don't get to say anything, right? And this is exactly it. So you need family to talk to family. And Kevin, I'll let you speak to that part of it.
Yeah. So the reality is over the past, I'd say, 10, 12 years, we've become highly racialized. What I mean by that is we become hypersensitive around race. The amount of melanin content you have in your skin makes all the difference as to whether we're going to hear you or dismiss you. So a lot of people in, let's say, communities of color in general, have really learned to dismiss folks that have little melanin content. And so what we have to be better at is recognizing that we are one race, that everybody's experiences are unique, that all of those unique experiences can be combined to help us to grow and mature and understand one another. And so we have to be better about fully accepting one another, irrespective of melanin content. And because that's really the distinction here. The whole race issue, the reason why race is really not an issue is because God created us all. He created one race. And DNA specialists, DNA scientists say that there's 0.02 something percent of what it means to be human that has to do with melanin content in skin. So we have like thousandths of a percent difference or distinction between us. Fundamentally, we're all in this together, and we all need to know how to respect, encourage, and listen to one another again. And we've kind of lost that over the past decade or so. What we're doing at Every Black Life Matters is trying to help people focus on the main thing. The main thing is there's a systemic plight that has provided a barrier, if you will, for Black life. That plight is not.
I think we may have lost him.
I think I lost you a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go back. Yeah.
Are you still hearing me? I'm assuming you're still hearing me.
Yeah.
That plight is not based on race per se. That plight is more based on policies, politics. So I'll stop there because it looks like I may not actually be online right now, and I don't know if you're actually hearing me, but I'm not.
You're online,
seeing or hearing anyone. So.
Oh, he can't see us. Okay.
Can you still hear me?
I'll continue Kevin's thought. So basically, the idea is that most of the problems we see are caused by government. In other words, if we had to let the African American communities to do their own thing, to be on their own, and not offer them aid, they would be far better off today than they would have been had the government not stepped in. Because then they have independence.
You guys still there?
Yeah. Can you hear us? I think his line may be cut. So they would have more independence. They'd have take more responsibility of their own causes. But as the government has stepped in, as Ronald Reagan said, the most scariest thing you can hear is, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you. Right? And that is what happened here. We've seen this over and over again where the government steps in and just messes things up completely. I mean, if a small business messes things up, they go out of business. If the government messes things up, they just pour more money into doing the same bad policy over and over again, saying, well, we didn't put enough money into it. Let's try it in a bigger mode with more people now. And we see that over and over again with government. And that's the problem here. We need less government, not more. And Marxism means more government. And BLM wants more government. They think the government is going to help them. And I always say, look, when have governments been really good for minorities? In all of history, governments have been the biggest violators of minorities than free markets. Because in a free market, you want people to be your customers. And you don't care what race they are. You don't care what culture they are. You don't care what gender they are. You don't care if they're gay or not gay. You just want them to buy your product, right? And so you're going to be the best producer of that product. But the government doesn't care about that. I mean, if you look at all the genocide in the history, it's all been by governments against minorities. Why would you want to give government more power as a minority? It makes no sense.
Exactly.
It also creates a dependency.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, but that's what government wants.
And that's where. Wants, right? Yeah, well, it's like if you grew up in a family where, the silver spoon in your mouth, and everything was just given to you, and you expect it. By the way, that's pretty much describing America today. Even the poor in this land live like kings and queens compared to other nations.
Yes.
And we are spoiled rotten. We're at that highest level, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, either in actuality or in expectancy. We expect to be taken care of. We expect things to go our way, and we don't expect to have problems. And when you have an entity that comes along and says, here, let me fulfill that dream for you, you go, well, of course. And that's you have to earn your way in society, because that's the only way you're going to learn is by earning. If it's given to you, you're not going to do that. And that's a huge plight with the community we're talking about, because the government has given them so much. Well, not every. In terms of money, they've given them a lot, taking care of them, Obama phones, et cetera, whatever you want to talk about. But it's been expected for the government to be the daddy here and to take care of you, and that you really don't have to do anything. If you're a woman, just have more babies, and the government will pay you more money. If you're dad, all you have to do is just stay away from them, and you're going to be fine. Which sends all the wrong messages. It's just insane where we've led ourselves to. We've got a couple more minutes. Kevin or Neil, if you want to leave us with anything, please fire away. I'm gonna after we get done with you today, I'm gonna read a Ronald Reagan executive order in 1987 where he talks about the family, and I would love to see the United States pass a law that mirrors this executive order. Now I'll read it. I don't know whether you're familiar with it or not, but it's about the family and how the government needs to stay out of the family. So, in a couple minutes, tell us again how we can support EBLM.
Okay. So let me pick up from here. So again, every Black Life Matters. You can contact us at everyblacklifematters.info. Everyblacklifematters.info. Now, I just have some parting comments because there's a lot of talk now on reparations. And, fundamentally, I say we should have that conversation. Now, here's the reason why. Reparations are always, conditioned upon the parties, the entities that actually cause the harm, to pay for those that they've caused the harm to. So if you go to court and you have somebody that's actually has means, the judge may say, look, we want you to pay restitution or reparations, if you will, to this party you've offended. If we take that and we sort of rationalize reparations based upon that, there has only been one entity that caused an elongated slavery, that caused an elongated Dred Scott, Black codes, and those other decisions, that caused an elongated Black plight even to this very day by virtue of its embrace of extermination of the Negro population in the womb. So we should hold that entity specifically because that was the entity that really caused all of these collective harms upon the Black community. So that entity is still around today. It has coffers of several billions of dollars. We should all, first of all, defund that entity immediately, and then ask that entity for reparations with their coffers that they already have. It cannot be spread holistically across America because there were a lot of Northern abolitionists who fought for Black life back in the 1800s when we had our Civil War. Those people lost their fathers, uncles, brothers. They put their lives and their fortunes and their sacred honor on the line to help set the captive free. That being the African Americans at that time. So they've already sacrificed those families in the North, those abolitionists. The ones who we have to hold accountable are the slave trade ones, and those who encourage segregation, slavery, and then, of course, ultimately, destruction of the Black life in the womb. Those are the ones we hold accountable. So let's have reparations with them. And if you've done your homework, you know who that is. So I don't have to say it.
Okay, just to make, because we got slow learners in the audience, I'm guessing that's a Democrat party.
You get an A.
That is the Democrat
Neil,
Party.
thank you very much. Kevin, you've been a pleasure to have on the show today, both of you. Neil, any parting comments?
Yeah, I think that this is a solvable problem, but if we don't solve it, it will become huge, and it will do what the Marxists want. It will tear America up. So, again, I think go to our website. If you run into people who are yelling at you, just say yes. We care about Black lives. We want every Black life to matter, and we want to stop the fact. Did you know that 30% of all African Americans have been killed in the womb? There would be 30% more African Americans today if it hadn't been for Planned Parenthood. So we care about these things. And so I think it's a great way to respond to people, and then send them to the EBLM website and support us. Let's do, if you have a corporation, we'll come in, we'll do corporate training. Both Kevin and I are professionals in training, and we're both engineering professionals, IT professionals. So we know how to do that. We'll come in, we'll train your corporation. We'll do a conference at your church. We'll fly in, we'll do an all-day conference. We'll bring your church up to speed on all these things, how to answer it, how to pray, how to respond, and how to, most of all, how to change things for America.
Yes.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time today. God bless you and Godspeed. I'll get back with you privately. There's some organizations I think I need to connect you up with, and anything I can do to help, because as United States, united causes always work out best. Where there's unity, the Lord commands a blessing. So I guess that's what I'm saying, right?
Yes.
God bless you.
Thank you for having us. Really appreciate it.
We do as well. Mr. Anderson, if you would take us to break, and then I want to talk about that law that you guys can stay on, listen to this if you want. I want to talk about that law that I think we ought to have in the USA today.
Faith, discussion, and so much more. Last Call with BJ Edwards.
And so much division. That's one of our adversaries' greatest weapon. Is division and confusion, and then stirring up the hate. It's just absolutely incredible what we're going through, and the death of the Supreme Court justice isn't going to help the situation, but we could still look at it as an opportunity at the same time. Here is what I would like to see happen. I would like to see the gentlemen that are on the phone with us today, are on the show with us today, and the folks that I'm dealing with. I would love to see a united effort. In 1987, Ronald Reagan passed Executive Order 12606. And I'll read. By the authority vested in me as President by the Constitution and laws of the United States of America, in order to ensure that the autonomy and rights of the family are considered in the formulation and implementation of policies by executive departments and agency, it is hereby ordered as follows. In formulating and implementing policies and regulations that may have significant impact on family formation, maintenance, and general well-being, executive departments, agencies shall, to the extent permitted by law, assess such measures in light of the following questions. Key. Does this action, in other words, if they pass a law or if they deem to do something, these questions need to be asked. Does the action by government strengthen or erode the stability of the family, and particularly the marital commitment? Think about what we just talked about. Think about the government getting involved and how they divided the great society. Does this action strengthen or erode the authority and the rights of parents in the education, nurturing, health care, COVID-19, and supervision of their children? Public education. Does this action help the family perform its function, or does it substitute government activity for this function? Hello. This is an executive order, 1987, September, Ronald Reagan. Does this action by government increase or decrease family earnings? Does the proposed benefit of this action justify the impact on the family budget? Before they increase taxes, they have to look to what? Can this activity be carried out by a lower level of government or by the family itself? I would invert those two. I'd say the family itself and then lower government, but okay. You're not perfect, Ronald. What message, intended or otherwise, does the program send to the public concerning the status of the family? In America today, we have the tail wagging the dog. Education tells the family what to do. The government tells the family what to do. Businesses tell the family what to do. Think about it. What message does it send, a law or the action, to young people concerning the relationship between their behavior, their personal responsibility, and the norms of society? Executive departments and agencies shall identify proposed regulatory and statutory provisions that may have significant potential negative impact on the family's well-being, and provide adequate rationale on why such proposal should be submitted. Dad, it's your job to educate the family. Dad and mom. Children learn what in the family? They learn authority and they learn morals. And that's what we're seeing in society today. That hasn't been happening. The head of the department or agency shall certify in writing that, to the extent permitted by law, such measures have been assessed in light of the criteria in Section 1 of this order, and how such measures will enhance family well-being. Such certification shall be transmitted to the Office of Management and Budget. Departments and agencies shall give careful consideration to the family-related concerns and their impact in notices of proposed rulemaking and messages transmitting legislative proposals to the Congress. We're looking at everything we're doing through the prism of the family, and how is this helping the family? Now we need to define the family. One man, one woman, lifelong, committed, monogamous relationship with their biological or adopted children. We need to define that as we institute this law. The Office of Management and Budget shall, to the extent permitted by law, take action to ensure that the policies of the executive departments and agencies are applied in light of the criteria set forth in Section 1 of this order. The Office of Policy Development shall assess existing and proposed policies and regulations that impact family well-being in light of the criteria established by Section 1, provide evaluations on the measures that have significant potential impact on the family. The Office of Policy Department shall submit preliminary reports, including specific recommendations, to the Domestic Policy Council, and shall submit a final report to the President no later than 180 days from the date of this order. Each year after, a report including recommendations shall be submitted to the Domestic Policy Council to the President. This order is intended to improve the internal management of the executive branch and is not intended to create any right or benefit, substantive or procedural, enforceable law by a party against the United States, its agencies, its officers, or any person. The idea here is we want to create a law that will protect the natural family, and we define the natural family. God created 3 institutes for the benefit of man: the family, the church, and the government. If we have a vision in America, where there's no vision, the people perish. If our vision in America is simply the family, the natural family, and we take actions to assure, right now we'd have to repair the family. We'd have to restore the family. Then take the next step is setting it up on that pedestal where it needs to be, and look to it in terms of our future laws. And the Supreme Court justices would use that as their ruler, the family. How much different would America look like today if we had such a law, if we had such a vision, if the church had the vision? How much different would things be in America today? I'm guessing a lot better. A lot better. Of the problems we see in America today, we believe that America is in trouble because the family is broken, and it naturally follows that as goes the family, so goes the nation. If you want to fix what's wrong in America, you must first fix the family. If it's broken, if the foundation is cracked, nothing else is going to work, folks. Whether it be the establishments of government, business, media, entertainment, education, or the church, if the family is not in its proper place and form, all these institutions will be rendered helplessly ineffective. Hey, we appreciate you tuning in today. We appreciate our guests today. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. This has been your last call. And folks, I think we are on our last call.
Keeping you informed. This is Last Call with B.J. Edwards.